And hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content, including, but not limited to, full 7-round mock drafts for the New York Jets. We will have plenty more coming out, including our final full mock draft as well. But speaking of the New York Jets, I wanted to shift gears a little bit here today. And again, if you have your comments on this situation, I would love to hear from it. If you want to make a donation to the channel or you want to ensure that your comment is read, use the super chat feature to jump to the front of the line. But there has been a hot button debate in Jets fandom with Breece Hall over the last couple of days, with the rumor mill that the Jets could potentially look to move Breece Hall. Is it worth moving Breece Hall? There's a lot to dissect here. First and foremost, before I get into this debate, one thing I think that has to be abundantly clear is this. This is a whole new regime. This is a regime that hasn't drafted this roster. This is a regime that has no ties to these players. So if the Jets were to move players, and I said this when Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji were hired, do not be surprised if certain popular players or big players on this team get moved. It's just the way it works. You sometimes see it where a popular player, a player that you thought was going to be here a long time, could be moved. So if this does eventually happen, don't be surprised. But I have a lot of thoughts with Breece Hall. First of all, I think he's one of the most dynamic players on the Jets, and I just don't think you just give away that. And it was annoying because I think we're at that time of year where we've talked about the draft ad nauseum for months now, and we're getting just up until the draft. Once we get to about the week of the draft, I feel the draft talk picks up because then you maybe hear some trade rumors, you get a little bit closer. But right now we're in that weird period, the end of March, early April. All the workout sessions are over. Players are having their team meetings, but you need some juice. And this just seems like a little bit of a juicy story, something to talk about, and more importantly, debate. With Breece Hall, I do not think the Jets should move him for a myriad of reasons. Number one, he's still 23. Number two, he's still under team control. And the other big thing I look at with Breece Hall is this is a guy who is a dynamic playmaker on an offense that, let's be frank, doesn't have a lot of them. But that doesn't mean the Jets shouldn't explore moving him. I have a theory about how they should go about it. But first off, I just wanted to say, as I get a little bit tongue-tied, and my apologies, I do feel like the Jets, if they do move a player during the draft, it won't be Breece Hall. I was talking with Dom C last week. If you'd like to check out our full draft breakdown, you can check that on the live stream. We have a bunch of the shorts up there as well. So you can go check that out as well. But we really had a good conversation. I brought up the Breece Hall talk to him, and he made a good point that I agree with, that if there's a Jet that's going to get traded during the draft, I think it's going to be Quincy Williams and not Breece Hall. The thing with trading Breece Hall is you want to get great value. And here's the problem. You're kind of selling him for 75 cents on the dollar. Not to say Breece Hall wasn't very good last year. He still was a dynamic player. But when you look at his production, 876 rushing yards down from the previous year, receiving yards down, all of his stats were down from the previous season, a season where, I remind you, he was coming off an ACL. And I understand that the Jets, it's not all his fault. When you look at the rushing attempts, he had almost 25 less rushing attempts than last year. He had almost 20 less receptions than last year. I blame it more on the offensive staff and the quarterback usage than anything last year. But if you're a team trading for Breece Hall, you want to sell to the fan base what you're getting. And if the Jets were to trade Breece Hall, and again, I've seen a lot of the packages out there, and I think a lot of them are terrible packages. You know what that GM is going to sell to his fan base. If someone were to trade for Breece Hall, whatever GM it would be, in the hypothetical I'm putting out there, you know what they would sell to their fan base? They would say, look, we are getting a dynamic playmaker that the Jets didn't know how to use. We are getting a dynamic player for a great value. We are getting an under the radar player for incredible value. Now, a lot of this goes back to the talk of could the Jets potentially draft Ashton Genty? They have interest in Ashton Genty. And my thoughts are yes, Ashton Genty, probably a better prospect than Breece Hall. But the Jets have so many holes on this roster, I don't think it makes sense to use that first pick on a running back. This goes back to the comments that Aaron Glenn made that he wants to do a running back by committee, even though I think that's more that the Jets have 3 talented running backs and that he's going to try to get them all involved in the run game and they're going to run the ball all the time. I just look at this and go, unless a team were to give you an offer that if you as a fan were say the Jets had to take that offer, then I would not trade Breece Hall, especially this offseason. Unless a team gave you a Jamal-like Adams trade package, and I'm not saying 2 first-round picks like the Jets got, but I'm saying an offer where you look at what the Jets got in return and you say, okay, the Jets couldn't turn that down. But if we're talking like 3rd-round picks, 2nd-round picks, or just a 2nd-round pick next year, I mean, the Jets also traded up in the 2nd round to get Breece Hall. So just getting a 2nd-round pick, you're losing value on a guy that you spent capital on to go up and get. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. If you were to trade Breece Hall, here are my thoughts on this. You don't trade him now. You don't trade him during the draft. You don't trade him during the offseason. There are 2 times if you were to move him, and full disclosure, I don't want to see Breece Hall go everywhere. I want to see him finish his career at the Jets. I want to see him be a dynamic playmaker for this team, and I want to see him continue to develop in a system that looks like it's going to heavily favor the running backs. But if this front office and this coaching staff get to the point where they look at Breece Hall and they make the decision that they are better off running back by committee and they're better off investing in assets that they're going to get back for him to build this roster, then there are 2 times where you look to make this move. Number 1 is at the trade deadline. At the trade deadline, Breece Hall could get better value because let's be frank. Like I pointed out, you look at his stats from last year, they were on a downhill from the previous year. But if he starts off this next year with a great start, and by all indications, he very well could because this team's going to, like I said, they're going to run the heck out of the football. And if they do that, it's going to help him look like a better running back. It's going to help his statistics. And if the Jets get to the trade deadline and they feel like they are out of it, they don't have a chance to compete, it's a good time to move him. Now, the thing with that is when we get to the trade deadline, you might be able to get a lot more for Breece Hall because at the trade deadline, the teams that are going for it, they're not thinking about the draft. They're thinking about winning a Super Bowl. So if a team sees Breece Hall as a missing piece to a Super Bowl roster, they're not going to mind paying draft capital for that piece because their thoughts are, number 1, we're going for it. Number 2, if we do go for it and we're as good as we think, this draft pick isn't going to be as valuable because we're going to have a better record. So if you're the Jets and you want to get the maximum value for Breece Hall, I would either do it at the trade deadline or after next offseason. Now, that comes with a little bit of risk because you're likely going to have to franchise tag and trade. Maybe you have to hope for a new team to give a contract. But at that point, if Breece Hall has a Pro Bowl season, comes off with over 1,000 rushing yards, which is certainly possible in this scheme, then it makes him a more valuable piece to trade. Right now, you are not getting the value you could get out of him. You're not getting the maximum value. When I look at a guy like Quincy Williams, a guy who is still playing at an incredibly high level, I think you could get market value for him. I don't think you're going to get the market value for Breece Hall that you're expecting. I think the Jets can move a couple of players even during the draft before we even get to Breece Hall. But as much as I love this debate and as much as I love Breece Hall, I just get the sense that this team is not going to move him at the end of the day. I just think that this is an interesting topic because one of the best prospects is a running back, likely could be on the board when the Jets pick at 7, and it brings up a very interesting debate. Now, again, we also look at this as a team that values the running back maybe more than other teams. Don't forget the Broncos made a big splash to move up in the second round for a running back 2 years ago. The Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs and traded up for him in the first round in an era where you don't do that for running backs. So if Ashton Genty's there and they take him, if anything, I think they're going to let this be a monster with Breece Hall and Ashton Genty. I don't think it's going to be they take Genty and just move on for Breece Hall. But either way, this team has to make smart decisions. And if you want to make the smartest decision of getting the value that you really want for Breece Hall, what you have to do is maximize it. And unfortunately, right now, I just don't see you maximizing it. Just simply because his value isn't that great right now. He's coming off a down season compared to his 2023 season, a season which he was coming off an ACL and there weren't as many expectations. Once again, though, I don't blame Breece. I blame the offensive staff. I blame this coaching staff for not giving him enough touches. I blame the staff for not giving him the ball enough. And it's just one of those frustrating things where we're at this point now where I don't see a great resolution to this. But if you were to ask me as a football observer, it makes no sense to trade him now. The only way I am trading Breece Hall before during this draft is if a team makes an offer. I'm talking multiple picks. I'm talking a pick and a really good player where I go, I can't debate. I can't. You have to make that move. It's like the Jamal Adams move. And I'm not saying you have to get the same value, but when I saw the Jamal Adams move, I'm like, okay, the Jets had to make this trade. The value was just too good for the Jets to say no. That is what I'm looking for if the Jets were to move Breece Hall, is a move where I look back and go, okay, that was an incredible offer. The Jets had to make that move. They had to trade Breece Hall. But then again, I also look at it this way. What are you losing? And everyone keeps saying, oh, just trade for draft picks. That means the Jets will go into the next season with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis as their running backs. If they draft Ashton Genty, maybe that helps alleviate it, but it doesn't make sense to just trade Breece Hall, draft another running back at some point this year when this team already has a myriad of needs. This team needs help on the offensive line. They need help on the defensive line. They need help in the wide receiver room. They need help in the tight end room. They need help pretty much in every room on this team. The one of the few rooms that you feel like the Jets don't need to address immediately is the running back room. So the Jets have a lot of holes. So why are the Jets just giving away arguably their most valuable assets in one of their few positions that has decent depth for nothing? I don't think that they will. And I do think Breece Hall is going to be here. And I do think that this is just being brought up because it's an interesting debate. It's a topic that Jet fans can throw back and forth. It's a topic that the media can throw back and forth. It's an intriguing option. And again, it adds juice to other teams because other teams are going to set other teams and other fan bases will speculate and come up with their own trade packages. And trust me, I've seen a bunch of them. And it's all like, oh, we're going to give up this backup receiver and a 4th-round pick for Breece Hall. And I just look at him like, no. Oh, we're going to give up a 3rd-round pick and this like backup defensive tackle. And the Jets are going to – I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. It would have to be a legitimate starting wide receiver and a pick or a myriad of really good draft picks. And to be honest, I don't see a team giving that up for a running back. I don't see a team giving that up for a running back that didn't rush for 1,000 yards last year. I don't see a team basically throwing away draft picks right before the NFL draft. The 2 times that I could see the Jets getting the value that they want for Breece Hall if they were to trade him, which again, I'm not condoning, is around the NFL trade deadline when you have a couple of teams who have made the decision to go make a Super Bowl run and feel like he could be the missing piece and are willing to overpay at that point because they're not thinking about the future. They're thinking about making a run. Or at the end of the season, where if he has a great season, he'll be 24. The Jets have made the decision. They don't want to necessarily invest in a running back long-term. So they've made the decision. They're going to get out at that point and get as much value as they can, but they're trading Breece Hall after his best season. That is when you do it. Okay, guys, let's check out the comment section. Again, jump to the front of the line. Use that super chat feature. Our first comment is from Matthias Simon. This regime has a lot of work to do. You got rid of players already, now you build. Breece stays, so does Quincy. You're only getting a fourth rounder for Quincy, just build now. Matthias, you bring up a really good point about Quincy. And Quincy kind of falls into the range for me of Breece, where if you're going to move him, I would prefer the trade deadline. The difference with Quincy, though, is he's 29. He's older than Breece. This team is clearly looking for the long-term build. And with Quincy, I just look at the situation and I go, can you get great value for a player? Because, look, they've already invested in Jamie Sherwood, which was the right decision. He's 25. He's the younger version, basically, of Quincy. I think that they made a great investment there. The Jets have already made an investment in Quincy, and they've maximized on that. The hard part now is what happens with Quincy. Is he going to hold out? Is he going to be in camp? Is he going to be refusing to play unless he gets a new contract? That is something that could be held over the heads, and I'm kind of wondering if the staff won't even let it get to that. The weird thing with Quincy, though, is you have to account for Quinnen. You want Quinnen Williams to be happy. And if Quinnen Williams is going to not be happy if his brother is just traded, and I think he will understand it is a business, but if he is traded, I do wonder how that's going to impact Quinnen and what Quinnen wants to do here. So that's one of the factors of the story that I don't think enough people take into account. But the other thing we have to look at, too, is when we think of Quincy Williams, he has had a great story. He has been a successful NFL linebacker. But the time he was successful was under Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich. When you look at his career, when he hasn't been in those defenses, he hasn't been the same player. He hasn't been a dynamic linebacker. And a part of me wonders, what does this coaching staff think? Does this coaching staff think he's going to fit in this new scheme? Obviously, they think Jamie Sherwood is, because they've invested a lot of money in him. But with Quincy, do they look at it and go, we really like Quincy, but we don't want to have two small linebackers on the field. We really like Quincy, but we're not sure what we're going to get out of him. We like Quincy, but we just don't really see him having a dynamic role in this defense. Where Breece, you can make an exception where I think you can utilize him as a receiver more. You can use him as a running back. There's a lot of options Breece brings to the table. With Quincy, we have to remember this is going to be an all-new scheme. This is going to be an all-new defense. And we're going to learn a lot about this defense and how they're looking to build it really through the draft. We will have a better blueprint for the New York Jets after this draft. And that's why I think this draft is so intriguing, because yes, the Jets are selecting players. Yes, the Jets are adding players to this roster. But the biggest thing for this draft is making sure this team builds an identity. And more importantly, we are going to find out what this Jet team is looking for, what this Jet team values. Do they value size? Do they value speed? Do they value physicality? Do they value production? Do they value the intangibles? Do they value upside? We're going to really learn that by the players that they bring in this draft. We are going to get an idea of what the blueprint is. And part of the thing with the Jet fans right now, and why this is speculation with Breece, is we don't really know what the blueprint is. We don't know what the blueprint for the 2025 Jets and the Aaron Glenn Jets is supposed to be. We have ideas, we have theories, we have speculation, but we really don't know at this point. But overall, once again, to sum up, I just don't think Breece Hall is going to get traded. A dynamic player, this team's going to want to run the football. It doesn't make sense to let go of your number one running back, but more importantly, you want to maximize a player's value. You're not doing this right now. You're not going to get the most bang for your buck right now if you trade Breece Hall now. If you want to maximize his value, you do it during the trade deadline, during the season, or at the end of next season. But right now, the best course of action for the New York Jets is to keep Breece Hall. However, if the Jets do decide to make this move, if they do decide to move on from him, that is the choice of this new regime. And let's be honest, they have every right to make any decision that they want, because they're coming in with a fresh new idea. They're coming in with a new scheme. They're coming in to build a culture here. And to do that, sometimes there are painful steps, especially when they move on from a player you love. We've seen that happen. But if it works in the end, it's worth it. The hard part is the steps to get to that process. There's going to be painful growing steps. And again, Jets fans don't want to hear it with the playoff drought. I understand it. But sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. And it feels like that's what the Jets are doing in 2025. But to me, it would be an even bigger step back if they were to trade Breece Hall now and not get the value of what they're expecting. Thank you so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest content. If you're joining us after the live stream, you have your comments, please put them below so that I can respond to them and get back to you. But until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk. Thank you for joining us here today.